strategic consulting firm, professional RE brokerage. And then you have the American Family Alliance, globalfamilyalliance.org, which sounds pretty interesting. And then you also have AmericanLifeAndLiberty.com. So looks like you're pretty active to me, but let's hear from our guest. So Debbie, please take it away.
Okay, well, thank you. Daryl Brooks invited me to this group, and I spoke to Lourdes yesterday and again today. So thank you very much for the invitation. I know your focus is strongly on election integrity. In America, our vote is everything. And in 2020, it became very self-evident that our election was stolen. Any protests by the people have been ignored. Court cases have not looked into the questions that are held. Our government did not listen to everything on January 6th. So we know that there's a lot of concerns. The question is, what can we do at this point? Over the last 3 years, we know people have been very dedicated in getting the truth out and fighting for the America we know and love. And I have a beagle coming upstairs. And so if he starts howling, I'm going to turn off the mute and try to get him out of the room. My husband's due home any minute, so I do apologize. I was hoping. So we've learned in the last few years how serious this is. It's not just one item in regards to our election. It has to do with just about every part of our lives. And people at this point are exhausted because they thought they had a country where we could just, we the people, go to our government, petition our concerns, stand on our Constitution, and ensure the future of our nation. And we've been faced with challenges all over the place. Again, you spoke to in the introduction that, yes, I did grow up in California and Los Angeles. My mom was a psychoanalyst. She was groomed from a young age to go into the psy-ops programs, research at the universities. She attended USC and worked with UCLA and the psychoanalytic foundations that started in California. There's a lot of cloak and dagger and a lot of things that happened, but from pretty much my experience and my time period there, my mother, as a young, brilliant doctor, was brought into a bunch of think tanks and research institutes to look at that point, they were concerned about communism taking over our country. My question is, how did we go from protecting against communism to what we have today? So there is a journey there, and it's long and involved and definitely not part of the conversation tonight. But they were at that point looking at how to make super warriors. They were looking at how to get enemy combatants to speak, how to control groups of people, how to control nations, and what does that research look like? It's a lot of it is now public domain, so there's a lot of information out there if you want to go down those rabbit holes. What it led my mom to was a very big career, and I spent my younger years wanting to be pre-med, become a doctor, and I helped her administrate her programs, helping patients that were dual diagnoses, this new thing called autism, PTSD, and victims of terror. She ended up overseas, another long story, working for our government. She went to the Middle East, and then she went to the Philippines. And she saw firsthand the terrorists and the tactics they were using, and she reported back to the government what that looked like. What she learned overseas, which dates through 2009, was the top secret projects and weaponry and everything she became an expert in biochem warfare and directed energy warfare, pretty much was the terrorists have it, the gangs have it, and third world nations have it, which means that different groups with many interests now have technologies and powers and the opportunity to harm our country, and American populace do not understand any of this information. Fast forward, my uncle, counterintelligence, Air Force, ran the OSI. When he retired, went up the scale even higher, top clearances all the way up, again, dealing with all of these things that my mother had studied and became an expert in. So my childhood, I had a little bit more access and more information into some of these things, but I opted to stay out of it. I chose to help people build better lives, figure out what's going on and how to become healthy and live a good life. As you stated, in 2012, it became personal. I ended up marrying a man. I had 4 children, and Daryl knows the story. It's quite long. Again, not going into the details of it. His family was all CIA. So mine was counterintelligence, anti-communistic, and all of the rest. His family was CIA. I just wanted to ride horses, live in the country, raise my children, and live the typical normal American life, helping people along the way and consulting. We ended up in court because I was developing programs to empower people in their individual lives and make them healthy. That is counter to being controlled and manipulated. So it became a dirty word. So my ex basically threatened to take all 4 of my children if I did not stay under his power and control and be allowed to abuse us and keep us from being successful. It was a very dark and hard time because even though my mother was an expert in malignant personalities and psy-ops and how all this rolled, I understood some of it, but I definitely didn't understand practically being involved in the middle of a psy war game. I didn't know what a liar was, and I didn't know how the agencies and the court system in our nation work. In 1997, this is way before I ever entered the picture of family courts, the Clintons put into the court system a mechanism where pre-Patriot Act, families were considered terrorists. And if they wanted to remove children, typically from fathers, later from mothers, and then from anybody they targeted, they had a private court system, no constitution, and determinations were made. We understand now how lawfare works. We understand how the court system is not just or fair. We understand how many people have been harmed in the last, since 2016, 2015, 16, to current, how many people have been hurt, becoming a Supreme Court justice, Trump, and anybody that's been associated with anything they want to talk to. And then you've seen other people walk through doors with no issues. They spent, the Clintons who put the Family Act in 1997, spent years perfecting the art of lawfare, whatever, fighting in courts. So it became personal when I lost custody of all 4 of my children. Never had any problems with the law, alcohol or drugs, anything. I just worked, made money, and raised my family. I lost them because my ex said so. The system didn't work. I knew the mental health field. What they were doing was harming my children. Crisis is not a crime. This infuriated me. I was devastated. It was 5 years of fighting. But what I came to find out was this was an international first world problem from the global, as we now know, elites controlling our nation. I spoke to judges, I spoke to lawyers, I spoke to families, I talked to therapists, I talked to everybody. And they all concluded it's not right, it's not just, it's not American. Well, the left has had 30 years in that aspect. The government has these programs to understand how to control people. These are 2 facts I grew up in the middle of. I ended up going overseas. I met my husband. We got married, my new husband, after my divorce and losing my children. And we came home when his father died. And at that point, Trump had won the election. And I started to see patterns in what was happening to Trump. To me, it was clear as day because I just survived it. And it almost killed me. But I saw it repeating in our country. So I wanted to get active and support our president. We went through what we did. In 2019, Virginia, which had been fairly stable over the years, all of a sudden we lost Virginia. We won our county. My husband calls Fauquier County, where I live, 1 hour west of DC, the front line of the heartland, because everything on the other side of us is blue, and we are the first solid red county. We border Loudoun, which all of you guys have heard of in the news, and Prince William County. Our board of supervisors is 4-1. We just won a win. Our school board is now 5. We replaced one Dem that was on it.
When you say 4-1, you mean 4 Republicans to 1 Democrat?
Front line of the heartland. We are red. We are flyover America. We are the beginning of the heartland of the country. You guys, we consider on the other side of enemy lines. It doesn't mean that there's not a lot of true Americans that care on both sides of the party. It is a uniparty that care about our country, that don't understand what's happened during this time period. So in 2017, we got involved. 2019, we lost Virginia after winning our county. So we decided to go to the GOP and we said, have you looked at the websites of the left? Have you looked at the money they're offering? Have you looked at their actions, their engagements, the buses coming in, all this stuff that was happening in 2019 before 2020? And the GOP said, look, we don't do that. We push voters to vote in November. We don't get involved in primaries. We don't vet. We don't care. This is how we operate. If you want to go do it yourself. So we started forming think tanks, and we met every Sunday night. You saw the two-way wave go across the country and through Virginia. And we said it's more than just guns. Just like I said, it was more than just my children. It was more than just the experiments of my mother or the counterintelligence of my uncle. This was a constitutional crisis in our country. So we decided, somebody asked us, are you going to influence elections? And we said, hell yes. That's our goal. We want to get good candidates in that are going to listen to the people, protect our rights, and make sure America stays America. So they said, then you need to form a PAC. So American Life and Liberty was, instead of the 2A movements, became our PAC. So we started meeting all the time. We worked with our elected officials, and we got people together. Long story, COVID hits, they shut us down. We no longer can meet in a pub. And on June 20th, they had just announced that only 8 people could get together for 4th of July. I live in the country. Most people's family out here were 20, 30 people, easy. We had been done with all the restrictions, all the fear mongering. Again, it's everything I saw in my childhood and all my studies working with people on what is healthy and what are things you do not do because it harms you as a person. So we made a joke online. Who wants to reboot 2020? This is not working out how we want it to work. And somebody said, great, what time? I looked at my husband and I said, oh no. So we called around, talked to a bunch of friends, and everybody said, we're not doing it. So on a Tuesday before 4th of July in 2020, we had 150 people show up at our house with grandma's best food, all their kids. It's a sunny day. At that point, my father-in-law died. I was home taking care with my husband of his mother on 5 acres on the lake with the sun setting. We had a big bonfire, food everywhere, kids running, chasing balls, and people getting together the first time since March. It was amazing. We were there till 1:30 in the morning, and somebody said, well, when's the next one? You go, well, what are you talking about? Well, we have done it now. In June, it will be 2020 to 2024, every weekend, no matter the weather or the circumstances of what's going on in the world. And we have had anywhere from, on the coldest of days, maybe 75 people up to over 325, 350 people come every single month. Candidates found us, elected officials found us, and lecturers from around, people that are just projects and organizations and people like you and Tom Homan and Tony Schaefer and a whole bunch of people have shown up at our door and spoken to our crowds. It's now very organized and we do it regularly. Beyond that, we saw we needed to be prepared in our homes because you never know when you're going to be shut down again. We need to build networks and communities because it's so vital. We saw at the 2020 election, we went to DC in December. We went back January 6th. There's a picture on my newsletter and on my website of the reflecting pool with the Capitol behind it. That was January 6th. There were people in strollers, people with walkers, people in wheelchairs. It was peaceful. We sat next to a guy running psy-ops up the side of the building with an earpiece. And I heard the flashbangs and we got on the metro and left because I knew something bad was going down. Not one person that I went with that was there knew something was bad until they got home and saw it on TV. That was not their experience. That is not what we saw. But we saw what has happened since. And the people in our country held, period, without any constitution and all the things that they've gone through, including the ones that have died. My friend actually drove around Babbitt's best friend she was with that day for the next day until she got on the airplane to fly home. It was bad. What's happened is bad. And you know what? They did it to our country. And this did not happen in the last 2 years or 3 years. This has been organized and planned, and our system has been rigged for a long time. Point is, we are here now. So what do we do about it? Our answer in the beginning was to go to the GOP. They couldn't help. I remained in the GOP. For a year, we tried to parallel the GOP. That didn't work. I'm not going to be a national organization like that. So we put our people back in the GOP and tried to change it for the last 3 years, and we've gotten nowhere. We currently set up a new organization that's a caucus in Northern Virginia. Most of them are the election integrity people who we joined the election integrity shortly after 2020. And they saw there's problems with our elections, yes, but until we're in power, we cannot change this current system. There are things we can do, and doing those things are vital, but we cannot change and make a safe election that operates like any other organization or company would want it to work, where it's safe and secure and everybody gets a vote. They've set it up and rigged it in so many bad ways that we focus on the IDs, or we focus on the rolls, or we focus on working with the registers, or getting the ballots, or trying to get audits, or going to court and proving all this stuff. And they have thwarted us in every single direction. It doesn't mean that we haven't made headway, and it doesn't mean that we shouldn't engage and keep moving forward. But what it does mean is that to fix most of what we want to fix, we have the smart people to do it. We have the capacity to do it. The question is, how do we win? We've seen the movies. We've seen the challenges. We've seen court actions slowly going forward. Even in Georgia, in front of the judge, we've seen the pictures. I've seen the machines in person and them being able to switch it. They did it in front of a judge, but you know there's going to be some wonky thing where it doesn't change and we're stuck in the same situation we're in. But we have to paper it and we have to document it. So our Northern Virginia election integrity group came together, some of the top minds that I've ever met, sitting in the room. And I've been the most uneducated in that field, but I'm the voice of reason. I'm the one that looks at the whole picture. And I bring the reality to the table and help direct which way we're going. So I have a whole list of people that you can work with to help you with communications that are secure, how to work with the registrars if you can, what's worked, what hasn't worked, help with the voter rolls, looking at what's going on. But bottom line is the Albert sensors have been in the computers since 2016. We have documents of the memorandums of understanding that they were in our Virginia election since 2017. The Albert sensors, if you don't know, are the federal government monitoring our election equipment. If they are looking at our election equipment, they can be hacked, period. So there are a lot of avenues you can go with election integrity, but we have to clean our rolls. People do need to show up with IDs, and we need to get back to paper ballots. Everybody says that. To do all of that, we have to be in power. Now, we know you guys have seen, we saw you here at home in Pennsylvania watching them bring in bags of ballots. We saw you guys try to watch these elections. We've seen you guys fight for these elections. We've seen Trump come in and try to fight for these elections. And it's exhausting. And it's tiring. But it's not just the ballots. It is the online environments. And I'm sure all of you have seen all the different ways that they can rig the machines, change what we're doing. Italy came out, along with a lot of other people, that they had hands-on in changing our election. After 3 years of fighting to get this information public and many people dying overseas to make this public, they are talking to people in our government right now. I have people that I'm working with in DC. I have people in Northern Virginia. My goal now is to put people together and get everybody involved on the local level. We know there's problems in the schools. We know they're taking children from parents. We know they're turning boys into girls. We know they're putting porn everywhere. We know the obscenity, we know the absurdity, and we know the insanity. To get our 2024 is going to be the year of truth. And it's going to come out in absolutely every single direction. Every group I am in across this country, in Washington, D.C., and here in Virginia, have been fighting for years like you do. And you have. We are bringing this truth out, and we need people to stay involved locally and addressing these issues directly to their board of supervisors, to their registrars, and get it into the court system. But no, there's people on the top that are working just as hard. I'm sitting in the Senate in the inside meeting with the Republican staffers talking about the current events, and they call it the uniparty. They know it's the uniparty. They know that cocaine was not some powder somebody else dropped off. They know what's going on, and they're trying right now to get everything documented so that we can flip this. And the goal of 2024 is to flip it prior to the election. The hard part is they have had a plan in play for decades. And in 3 years, we're flipping everything. So it's going to get squirrely this year. And yes, they're going to try to kill Trump. I've heard he's already had 2 assassination attempts that obviously he's survived. We know they're going to steal the election again if they can. So we need people watching it. We need election officials. We need people documenting, and we need people in courts. So I don't know if that covers anything or everything. I do have a list of resources I can give you, and I can take questions and answers and help any way I can. My goal is to bring a reality to the situation and then find ways, once you understand the gravity, to actually act in ways that we can beat this. We have to beat this. There's no other choice. And if we're not successful in ensuring this election coming up, this country will go into civil war. And I hear it everywhere. So I know everybody I'm working with is fighting like hell between raising awareness, getting involved locally, and getting the overreach in the government to stop.
I have a question.
Absolutely.
You said you're talking to people in government. So are you saying that there are people with a conscience who care about the Constitution in certain
Mhm.
parts of the government and who are trying to work with patriots like yourself? Is that what you're
Mhm.
saying?
Yep, on both sides of the fence and within our party. A
Really?
psy-op is to get you to be scared and hate your neighbor. And you know, on the other side, they are scared and they hate us. And the more that we do not get together and work through our issues, the more this evil that has taken root in our society without a moral compass and without faith has grown into what we see today. And the goal is to even make you hate your neighbor, that you won't even try anymore. And that's the hardest thing that we're facing on our side is we're exhausted and that we see them as the enemy as well. Not everybody on the left or the other side that believes the left are bad and evil. There are people that do care, but they have created this division to control our country, and they are controlling it.
And that's a Marxist movement that they've created. Now, let me ask you, because I know you mentioned you've been keeping abreast of what's been going on in Pennsylvania. We were one of the key states, obviously. And I have heard on the inside for 2024 that Virginia is going to be hit hard with this type of attack against our elections. But what do we do when your attorney general is in on the fix? Your governor is in on the fix. Your state Supreme Court is in on the fix. No one wants to look at the evidence, right? And the evidence is there to be seen. So what would be your advice? How do we do this? So you're saying that we need to fight it before the election, the ballots are counted, or what do we need to do?
Do you guys have, I mean, again, I know we're on this side of the enemy line, and most everybody that I work with is on the other side. You guys are a little bit farther on the other side. Do you guys have anybody in your government that you can work with, or it's a completely a dead end? Beagle, go away. I guess my husband's still not home. Do you have anybody you can work with? Do you make any headway?
We do have some politicians that support, but this is the problem. When the Act 77 went through, the Republicans that were supported it afterwards said, well, we didn't know it was going to be like that, but they never took it down. So I'm not convinced that we have the support in them because they didn't do anything about it. You see, talk is cheap, right? You either
Yep.
walk the walk or not. And we
Well,
have
and the game is
anyway.
complex. The political game, good, maybe he's home. The political game is really complex, and it's all tied to the money. And so, I mean, I know we won in Virginia, and the governor is sitting in the house that he's sitting in. The problem is he won't talk about the swamp. He won't talk about some of the problems. He won't talk, even though he had one of the best election teams in the country, and he only won because Fairfax was driving away with that flash drive, and he was going to lose, and his team caught him. And I'm good friends with my Virginia senator, who's a constitutional lawyer that was in Arizona and in Virginia and worked for Youngkin. He wouldn't have won if they didn't have the mechanisms and the teams set up to win. Yet, my team in North Carolina has gone to him and he doesn't want to hear about it. He had hoped to run against Trump. To run against Trump, he had to deliver Virginia last year. And we lost most of our races last year because the candidates' hands were tied because governor gave them money and you can only say what the governor told you could say, which means we lost our elections. Good people didn't get in because they weren't allowed to fight with their values and principles and speak to people. And they saw them as just another patsy that was not going to get the job done. So it's very complex. And I call it Jenga. The system has been so Jenga, you really don't know where those landmines are until you get there. So what still can you do within, what has worked right now for you guys in the last 3 years, last 4 years now?
Well,
What has given you success?
well, I'll tell you, here in Pike County, we got 12 Patriots into positions of elected
Good.
officials. So we're infiltrating the system. Our GOP
Good.
has been exposed as being pretty much impotent.
Good.
And so it's put up or shut up, and they understand that they've canceled the last several meetings because I think they don't have the face to
Mhm.
meet with us and for us to call them out on all the deficiencies of what's been happening. We have the primary coming up in April and nothing has been done. And today there were meetings going on, I'm happy to say, and we're taking upon ourselves to run the primaries and to get the petitions signed,
Good.
which should have been a party unison type of
But
thing,
they're
but
not
it
doing
won't be. So the Patriots have to take things in their own hands. Now, the good news is this, I think, because, you know, they try to bash you and your organizations and
Mhm.
stuff. But we've aligned ourselves with the Pike County Council of Republican Women. We've aligned ourselves with a couple other organizations, and I think the GOP will be in shock to know that we're all coming out unified.
Good.
And they're scared, actually. They're pretty scared. That's a good start.
They're scared across the country of what's going on and the truth coming out and people actually having conversations and starting to get together again. That's why our election integrity group just started the America First Caucus here in Northern Virginia, which is statewide, because we are going to make sure that we get delegates into our GOP that believe in our country and are willing to fight. We are going to make sure that we get the silent majority that's still not coming out, get out to vote, and get the volunteers engaged in every level that we possibly can. We don't have that mechanism here in Virginia. The GOP has refused. We tried to support them, get involved and do it. So now we're taking over and pushing a radical change. So the way our GOP works is our central committee controls everything. There's a third of them, a third of us, but the old timers appointed a third. So they're always weighted to win. So we can't win anything. It's all set up. No different than the California elections where I grew up. It's all Dems on the ballots. It's very hard to win. So you still need to find where you can.
One
Yes.
thing, I'm in Florida.
Okay.
Okay, one thing we learned very quickly, we almost went socialist with Gilliam. I don't know if you're familiar. It was very close. Yeah, Trump came in and helped. But what happened after, and there is that we went from a 200,000 deficit of Republicans. And now you know us as a red state. We're close to 1 million. We jumped, I think we're up to 800,000 more Republicans. And some of it is from people moving here, yes. But what they did was, I think the governor at that time, he went after the Broward County's supervisor of elections, and he gave her an alternative, either arrested because he had the goods on her, and or you get out, you know. So she,
And that's what we need is strong
that
leadership.
kind of toughness is and then after that, what happened was we, as you see, we went after the independents. Okay, forget the Republic.
They don't need to hear it.
Independents. Yep. I was an independent. I'm out now in the RNC. I mean the REC here. The independence is what's flipped it. Many of it's just committee. We're a closed primary. That's the other thing that's very important to have a closed primary. So the stars are aligned for us because we had certain structural things in place. I don't know what it is in Pennsylvania. If you have a closed closed primaries are critical. Okay.
Well,
so,
look at what's going to happen in New Hampshire tomorrow.
Yeah, that's the problem there. But everybody knows about it. So if they try to pump it up, if she gets any votes, it's not going to have any meaning. But I'm from New Hampshire originally, so the thing that we found is now we go after everybody's looking under the rocks. Is there a Democrat there? Get them on the run. So there's only 3 spots in the state, and those are where the university is. The Florida State in Tallahassee, always in the state capitals, right? Then you have the University of Florida in Gainesville. It's not a huge city, but that's where, and the other part is we know they're in Orlando, UCF. Even Broward County is switched. So those are the areas we have to move. So at least you have a target, you have a goal, but you have to start cleaning it out. And it's like bacteria. That's the way we look at it here.
A malignant person, a malignant, corrupt system, you can't work with them. You have to clean it out. And that's
I think
why
Florida is
quote,
a good
unquote,
example of how fast you can going from
Yes.
socialist to a solid, or maybe one of the most red states in a matter of a very short period of time. That's the model, and it can be done.
Oh, Tom Homan was here in our backyard speaking to the crowd and said within a month we'd have complete shutdown of the border and there would not be an issue. Period. We had Victor Davis Hanson give a wonderful report less than a month ago saying with all the illegals in here, because one of the biggest things I saw in my county on the other side of the line was refugees with brand new driver's licenses from all the nations around the world voting in our election.
See,
And
we
we
don't have
lost
that
one.
here. And
So-
we're also now finding out who the judges are and what party they're with. We couldn't tell before, but now we're getting it out. So going after the judges, really important. Get those judges out because half of them are clowns that in the Democrats. They're just clowns. They don't even they have no qualifications, half of them.
We have a
They
horrible
control
problem with
everything.
judges here in Virginia. Horrible. And our family courts people, our election integrity people, everybody's fighting.
I think you have
courts
to
right
put
now.
heat on the who these judges are. That's what we did here in the last election. We flushed them out. So they're a little bit you know, they're scared. And it's important. They are scared of us. We
They
shouldn't
are.
be scared of them. They need to be scared of us. If we smell a rat, we go after them.
And that's the part of after generations of them Jengaing, as I call it, our society, we as the people have focused, and mainly conservatives, we're very focused on our businesses and our families and advancements on stuff. We have not focused on our government. Civics isn't taught in school anymore. What it means to be America. How do, one of the elected officials came running up to me before COVID hit and said, look, people have been fighting for these gun laws, but they don't understand that the ones that are in the House and the ones that are in the Senate in Virginia are going to cross over. And then you got to fight again. They don't know that. They don't know the simple process of how elections work, how government works, how something becomes a bill, how to petition the government, how to take things to court. So there's been a huge learning curve that we have found, understood, and we have come up against and learned. And they know what they're doing is not sustainable. It will destroy our country and destroy them. What we're learning, we will beat them. But we have to get people engaged locally and fight this on all levels using the talents that we have.
I think even after we got such good results, we're not sitting around thinking we can sit around. We know every single day that we're out or something, we have to keep pushing. We have to annihilate them. There's no other way.
There's no other way.
Okay, Debbie, I just want to give you the last minute to summarize, and then I'll show that your websites again. But any final thoughts you want to share?
I have a follow-up email that I can send you with people from our election integrity group that can help you with any of the questions that you have or any follow-ups that you have on what has worked for them, what hasn't worked for them. Regan George is somebody you can speak to directly. John LaRoe has been to a lot of the conferences and spoken on everything that he's learned. He has copied every single election and every single vote at great expense. We actually caught the governor's race where they didn't want our lieutenant governor to actually win, and they started gaming out the numbers in the ranked choice voting, and it was live on the internet. I recorded it, and all of them were in with the governor at the vote. And I called the lieutenant governor and said, I don't know what's going on, but I have it live and I'm recording it. All of a sudden it snapped back and she won. She wasn't gonna win. But it only happened because I was at home on the computer. John LaRoe, the scientist, was there. Our three organizations were on the floor with the elected officials during the counting, which means our eyes were there and we were present. And we knew enough to understand what they were trying to do, even though I never saw that. But we got our lieutenant governor in, and she knows it. I recommend that we try to engage people. That's why we hold our, it's sort of like throwing a wedding every single month. Ask Daryl. He's been here, he knows. It is a lot of work. It's a lot of people. We bring a lot of people together. But the more that we remember we're neighbors, we all care about our families and we all care about the future. Everybody's been duped by the media and everything else going on. We have to have real conversations and we have to learn how our country works, and we got to drive the truth and the direction of our country because nobody else is going to do it. Nobody's going to save us, and we can't just hang out on my farm with horses and my children and ignore the rest of the world. If you don't do politics, politics does us. And that is why we're sitting where we're sitting.
Debbie, can I ask you for your opinion real quick? Because
absolutely,
this is something that I put together today that really goes in tune with what you're saying about the middle. So I'm just gonna, if I could just share the screen for just one moment.
Absolutely.
Can you disable it, Richard?
Go ahead.
Yep.
Okay, so what we're doing here in Pike, we have about 9 point something% of the vote that's in the middle. And we know that if we get them, we win big. So
absolutely,
this is sticking to the facts of Biden economics, and register or change your political affiliation to Republic to vote against Biden economics. So it's not even about the candidate voting for Trump, because that's a far reach for the middle. But it's really making them think, is this what I want for the next 4 years? We can't afford this. And maybe that would be enough for them to either change their registration or inspire some people to actually register.
absolutely.
Share what your thoughts
going after the folks that it's hurting the most, which is the middle. One of the hardest things, and I've seen this a lot in the DC area when I go to Washington, DC, is, and with the hard economy, I do real estate and I do consulting. So it's hurt us. My husband's working, driving a truck to make sure we have our mortgage and food paid. So one of the things when I was looking for a side home job is that if I would say my pronouns, I gave them my vaccination record and everything else, I could make $200,000 a year at home. Because I would not provide all of that, I couldn't even find a job. Point being that when I would go to DC, I would see all the young people out there. A client took us to the Four Seasons. One entree was $80 to $150 just for the meat, half less anything else. It took us an hour and a half to get in the restaurant because it was packed. This is in the middle of what we're struggling with. We happen to have cash in our pockets, so we were okay, but my client ended up paying for it. But there is, if they're giving them more money and there's this buffer, they don't feel the economy like people are feeling because of the disparity. They're getting more because of they're buying into the system. and we're getting less, just like the illegals are getting all these benefits that our veterans and our immigrants and our poor and everybody else is not getting. So you got to understand the picture being painted and what is being said on the media is different. And there's this communication no different than Babel that we're facing right now. And there's this evil grip on people. So finding a way to get, as they say, the camel's nose under the tent and have a real conversation and make it real again is really vital right now. And going after those that are struggling and saying, hey, we're here to help. When I grew up in California, and most of my friends are conservative, even in California, the crunchy granola homeschoolers, you know, all the people that cared about their health tended to be liberal. Now we have conservatives that are homeschooling and they're prepping and they're doing all these different things that we didn't used to do before. It completely flipped because we understand what's at risk and how much we have to rely on ourselves. And our government and their agencies have lied and they have harmed our family and put power and money ahead of us as people in this nation. So going after the people that have been harmed and getting them to understand it in a softer way with compassion and realizing they've been lied to also. And they don't really want to believe that their child they just mutilated was not the best thing to do.
Okay,
I don't know if that's a good note to end on, though.
Amen.
look, there are a lot of leftists who are having
Yeah.
a big awakening, and they're not necessarily religious. They probably don't know so many committed Christians, but they're waking up too, and they realize that the propaganda state is after all of us. All of us are in, and there are a lot of leftists that I see who have realized that their allies are conservatives and Christians are their allies now. So
That
look,
we're the party that cares now.
right,
So we need to be available
right,
to help people. Not what they did during COVID and what they said over
Right.
here,
right.
but be available because they were lied to as well. They were hurt as well.
That's right.
And the more we embrace that they are
Right.
struggling through this, the more that we will grow this because we don't want everybody to be the same. We
Right.
need people on the other side, as my husband likes to say, yin and yang. We need the creative expression and we need the conservative boundaries.
That's
We
right.
work together as people that are different. And our tag slogan on our bonfires is a diverse group of like-minded people. We have had people from all over the world, all walks of life. And my husband's very liberal Butch Dyke sister said, you can't say they're a diverse group of like-minded people. And what he responded with is, you think everybody has to think the same and be the same. We do not.
Right.
We respect the liberty of all people, and we have a moral compass and a faith to get us there. And that's
right.
what our country was based on. Yeah. The diversity of people.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Cloud. We really appreciate
You're
your taking time out to share with us, and we hope to stay in touch and maybe come to one of your bonfires. So,
Please do.
Sounds warm and fuzzy.
We do it then as well.
Good, because
It's a
it's
little chilly
freezing
right
up
now.
here.